Seth Godin Yama, How to Learn to Get Out and Become a Winner. In his book, Yama, Seth Godin claims that Vince Lombardi was wrong when he said that those who give up without a fight never win, and winners never retreat. Seth is good. The Pit. How to Learn How to Get Out and Become a Winner. Abstract. In his book, Yama, Seth Godin argues that Vince Lombardi was wrong when he said that those who give up without a fight never win, and the winners never retreat. Seth is sure that it is the retreat that leads to victory. You just need to know when to back off, and gives a number of clever arguments in defense of your opinion. The author believes that sooner or later, each of us falls into a pit, a kind of recession period, and whether we will be able to persevere and get out of it depends on whether we will become first class in something of our own. The book will be of interest primarily to those who are in the ill-fated pit right now, and who therefore have enough time to spend it reading this witty book. However, it wouldn't hurt for everyone else to read it too. The role of the first class is greatly underestimated. Dedicated to Helen. My hands drop almost daily. Not all the time, but sometimes it happens. I'm sure it happens to you too. If you are a persistent and purposeful person, who else will read this book? You have probably faced obstacles in your professional, personal, or social life. Well, or there, during a game of poker or Monopoly, we usually overcome obstacles. Sometimes we are disappointed in this case, prompting us to think in the spirit of Vince Lombardi. The one who gives up without a fight never wins. The winners never retreat. It's all nonsense, I'll tell you. The winners are retreating constantly. They just retreat at the right time and in the right place. Most people retreat, but it turns out they are unsuccessful. In fact, many professional communities and industries thrive thanks to such apostates. It is assumed that the majority will capitulate. To what extent they are counting on it? If you study a system that encourages apostasy, you will have a better chance of defeating it. And if you realize the principle of operation of the sewer collector, absorbed by so many, I call it a pit, you will come closer to understanding how not to fall into it. A generous reward awaits those brave souls who have the strength to move a little further than the majority. A generous reward also awaits those who have the courage to retreat at the very beginning and focus their efforts on something else. In the case of both, it's about how to become first class. About how to overcome an obstacle and be on the other side. Retreat before the futile, persist in the expedient. Have the courage to do the first or the second. The first class are not content with luck. Hannah Smith is probably extremely lucky. She works as a secretary in the Supreme Court. She was lucky enough to become first class. Last year, over 42,000 graduates left the walls of US law schools. 37 of them were awarded positions in the Supreme Court. They are guaranteed lifelong employment after they have worked for a year in the Supreme Court. It is a common practice in leading law firms to offer a one-time bonus of $200,000 or more to any Supreme Court clerk they manage to hire. Subsequently, these clerks become partners in private firms, judges, senators. 2 points are noteworthy here. First of all, Hannah Smith is completely unlucky. She is smart, purposeful, and very hardworking. And secondly, Any of the 42,000 graduates of last year could get her position. But I didn't get it. Not because they were all stupid or their relatives didn't have the right connections. They just retreated in some ways. No, they didn't drop out of school, college, or law school. They retreated on the way to becoming first class because the price seemed too high to them. Our little book is dedicated specifically to apostasy. Believe it or not, apostasy is often an excellent strategy for managing your own life or career. Although sometimes surrender is the worst option. To determine when it is reasonable to retreat and when not, as it turned out, is very simple. Hannah Smith is also an apostate. To succeed, she had to give up a lot of her aspirations. You can't realize yourself in everything, especially if you are planning to become first class. Before considering the topic of apostasy, it would be necessary to explain why it is so important to be first class. An amazing advantage of first class. Our culture extols champions. We honor the product, song, company or employee who took the first place in the rating. Their reward is more than generous, so much so that number 1 gets 10 times more than the 10th and 100 times more than the 100th. According to the International Ice Cream Association, the popularity rating of flavor additives to their product looks like this: vanilla, chocolate, nut butter, strawberry, Neapolitan, chocolate, vanilla, strawberry, chocolate chips, French vanilla, cookies and cream, cocoa, butter, vanilla, corn syrup, almonds, sugar and other proline. It probably occurred to you, as it happens most often, that the most popular flavor supplement is only slightly ahead of its followers. However, this is not the case. That's what the sales report. The average sales volume of vanilla is equal to 30% of the market. The chocolate that follows it takes only 7.5%, and the rest in descending order is even less. So, almost always there are actions of the Zipf law, which is subject to the selection of applicants, and resumes, and the choice of college applicants, and the rating of platinum, gold and other albums, and everything else. The winner gets almost everything, because the public loves the winners. Zipf's law is an empirical regularity of the distribution of purity of natural language words. If all the words of a language are ordered in descending order of the purity of their use, then the frequency of the first word in such a list will be approximately inversely proportional to its ordinal number. Editor's note. Here's another example. The box office of cinemas for a very meager week of August 2006. First place, Invincible. Second, Rocky Bobby King of the Road. Third, Little Miss Happiness. Fourth, Beer Boom. Fifth, Gemini Tower. Sixth, We Were Accepted. Seventh, Snake Flight. The eighth is A Step Forward. The ninth is My White Laurel Life. 10th, Horns and Hooves. It is bitter to think about the fate of the Beer Boom. Still, he took 4th place. However, let's look at the box office data. If you happened to read the long tail of Chris Anderson's Z Lone Tail, it is unlikely that this will surprise you. But we are not talking about a long tail, but a small head. A small, roomy and cost-effective head, represented by a juicy market share, which is at the disposal of the chart leaders. The film Invincible, standing in the first place, collected about $17 million. Ricky Bobby's film The King of the Road, standing in second place, collected about $7 million, and the rest are down in descending order. Everyone is drawn to the best. People don't have too much free time, and therefore they don't want to put themselves at extra risk. If you have been diagnosed with mental cancer, You will not beat the thresholds of different polyclinics. You will immediately turn to the luminary. Is it worth wasting time on trifles? If there is only one chance, being in a city for the first time, you will want to visit an ordinary restaurant or ask the doorman about the best local institution. When hiring a staff, you will instruct your officer to select a resume of average quality or ask him to identify the best applicants. No wonder, with a small amount of time and limited opportunities for experiments, we deliberately narrow our choice to the best category. You're not the only one reaching for the best. Everyone stretches. As a result, the prize for the championship is more than generous. There is no linear relationship between the awards by the winner. It will not be possible to add a little and get a little in return. The dependence is presented here in the form of a curve and a steep one. The top is submitted to units. The second reason for the huge advantage of being number one is not so obvious. Staying at the top is also great because there is not much space there. The limited circle of the chosen strengthens their status even more. There are thousands of brands of bottled water, and they are all practically the same. Whether it's Dom Perignon champagne, which enters or approaches the circle of the chosen, so we are ready to pay for it. What causes the limitation of the circle? The reason is the obstacles created by the market and society. Countless competitors would have retreated long before they managed to create something worthy of the status of the chosen one. So it happened. The whole system is based on this. Who is first class? Everyone who is going to give you a job, buy your product, provide you with recommendations, or perform the work you have assigned, asks the question, are you first class or not? That is, based on the current opinion, the available information, they form the concept of a high class and operate on it. For example, if I need the services of an editor, I want to get a first-class English-speaking specialist who agrees and now has the opportunity to work with me for a fee that I can afford. In this sense, he is my first-class choice. If I need to remove a hernia, I will want to operate with a first-class surgeon who will owe his status to the reviews of my friends and my idea of what a surgeon from the elite circle should be. Yes, and he will need to live in my city and practice. So class is a broad concept. The Massachusetts market is dying. There is no longer the single best musical composition or brand of coffee. Now there are millions of micro-markets, each of which has its own circle of favorites. If your micro-market is healthy food in Tulsa, then this city represents your class. And being first class in it is your urgent task. The first is a subjective concept. It's up to me, the consumer, to decide this, not you. Class is an even more vague concept. Again, I will classify, not you, based on how convenient or preferable this class is to me. Be the first in my class, and I will pay you immediately. The boundaries of my world are expanding, because there is an opportunity to look for something or someone everywhere. The number of choices is staggering, but it is up to me to determine the class based on my own preferences, and this process has nothing to do with geographical boundaries. At the same time, the boundaries of the world are narrowing due to increasing specialization. Today, I can order the best gluten-free onion buns, which will be delivered to me the next morning. I can get my company the best risk management software right now on the internet. And in order to find out about the best nudist resort in North America, it takes only 6 mouse clicks. Therefore, in addition to striving to be first class, it is important to determine the direction and diligently move forward in it. There are more selected circles, and their rewards are becoming more generous. Andy Warhol was first-rate. So is Srifi, a Thai restaurant in Queens. So is my editor. You can also enter this list if you wish. Otherwise, you shouldn't read on. Well, if this idea still inspires you, but its implementation has caused you only disappointment in the past, it's time now to engage in apostasy. Seth is sure that it is retreat that leads to victory. Only you need to know when to retreat, and gives a number of clever arguments in defense of his opinion. The author believes that sooner or later, each of us falls into a pit during a kind of recession, and whether we will be able to persevere and get out of it depends on whether we will become first class in something of our own. The book will be of interest primarily to those who are in the ill-fated pit right now, and who therefore have enough time to spend it reading this witty book. However, it wouldn't hurt for everyone else to read it too. The infinity problem. The problem of infinity is that there is no end to this infinity, and there is no edge. In almost any market, there are innumerable options to choose from. When faced with infinity, people panic or do not buy anything at all. Sometimes they choose the cheapest option that they would not have to purchase. Many prefer the offer of the market leader. Sales of bestsellers outstrip the volume of sales of other books. The traffic of the websites presented in the Dig online catalog is hundreds of times higher than the traffic of ordinary internet resources. Large insurance companies attract new customers only due to their size. Mediocrity irritates only the gifted. The number of job seekers is approaching infinity. The number of companies providing professional services, lawyers, beauty salons, snack bars, and soap brands is also striving there. As you can see, the danger of getting lost among your own kind is very great, and it is simply necessary to become first class. Is that the best you can do? A resume written entirely in capital letters, an advertising newsletter with distorted names of recipients. Sellers selling a few units of goods, doctors who do not bother to inquire about the results of long-term use of a new drug. All these people are content with little. They are content with less than what they are capable of. Organizations are also content with what will do anyway, instead of what is first class. If you are not going to make an effort to become my best possible choice, is it worth worrying? There is no one better yet. Is this an effective strategy for success? Do you intend to succeed just because you are the only one who is taken into account? The failure of large companies to enter new markets is almost always explained by their desire for compromise. They believe that, being large and influential, they can be content with little and not change anything, abandoning any attempts to create something wonderful. That is, they make concessions, trying not to offend other firms or make life easier for them, so they fail. They suffer because they do not understand when it is necessary to retreat and when it is necessary to stop being content with little. Fatal mistake of school teachers. Almost everything you have been told about life at school is a lie, but the most harmful, perhaps, is the following statement: versatility is the key to success. Having received 2 A's, a B+, and 3 4s at school, one could feel wonderful. Just imagine a poor guy who got an A+ and 4 3s. Yay, what a jerk. Fast forward a few decades and pay attention to the decision-making mechanism. Which doctor to give preference to, which restaurant to visit, which accountant to hire. How often do you turn to the services of someone who has succeeded in classes that you don't care about? Do you often ask yourself how good your accountant is driving or whether he plays golf decently? Remember that in a free market, the reward goes to the exceptional. At school, students are told that if something doesn't work out for them, they need to switch to something else. Why climb an apple tree if apples are hanging on branches near the ground? From the instructions for completing test tasks, skim through the questions, answering the simplest ones at the beginning. You skip those questions that you can't answer right away. A bad recommendation. Champions can't miss what doesn't work out. In fact, those whom we consider first class just specialize in what others fail to do. Most people avoid difficulties. Therefore, this majority is not in particular demand. Many organizations are confident that they have already put all the dots over and they have established customer service. A secretary is sitting in the reception area. The office is located in a convenient location. There are presentation materials and so on and so forth. However, all this is mediocre. In the vast majority of cases, their potential consumers prefer someone else from among their competitors. These competitors cannot boast of such comprehensiveness, but they are exceptionally good in the only direction that matters. The magic of apostate thinking. 20 years ago, I read a book that changed my life. It was called The Magic Big, The Magic of Large-Scale Thinking. To tell the truth, I don't remember much of that book. The only thing I know for sure is that suddenly, in an instant, she changed my views on success. I hope that the next few pages will produce a similar transformation with you. I would like you to change your mind about how to succeed and retreat. Many will say that it is necessary to persevere, work tirelessly, learn more, work hard. Having started, don't quit, they urge. But if all you need to succeed is not to back down, then why do organizations that are less focused on success than you achieve success? Why do those who are inferior to you in abilities win? The answer involves understanding the mechanism of apostasy, and, believe it or not, it provides for the need to retreat much more often than you are doing now. Strategic retreat is the key to the success of successful organizations. A belated and regular retreat is a curse on the path of those who strive for their cherished dream, but are doomed to failure. Many people practice just the latter. They retreat when it gets hard, and persist when they don't want to retreat. Almost any situation in which you find yourself trying to implement something can be illustrated with the help of two graphs. Rare exceptions to these are presented in an additional graph. Understanding the situations that force you to retreat or those in which you should retreat will be your first step towards realizing your cherished dream. Schedule 1. The pit. There is a pit waiting for any undertaking in the world. It looks like this. When you first start an activity, it seems pleasant to you. Whether you are starting to play golf or sign up for acupuncture courses, take your first flying lessons, or learn the basics of applied chemistry, in any case, you are interested, while receiving flattering feedback from others. Over the following days and weeks, the rapid pace of your training fuels your enthusiasm. Whatever your undertaking is, it is easy and pleasant to do it, and then you fall into the pit. The pit is a long torment that separates the path from beginner to master. But in fact, these torments are the shortest road because it leads to your dream faster than any other. The pit is a combination of bureaucratic red tape and everyday work required to obtain a scuba diver's certificate. The pit is what distinguishes the student's uncomplicated techniques from the teacher's more effective approach, whether it's skiing or fashion design. The pit is a long way from random luck to real achievement. A pit is an artificially created sieve designed to weed out people like you. If you studied organic chemistry in college, then you know what a pit is. The scientific community does not want too many unmotivated students to graduate from medical faculties. Therefore, it has established a Civ Organic Chemistry, a terrible course that weeds out different psychologists and leaves potential doctors. If you can't master organic chemistry, then the path to medical school is ordered for you. First, you announce that you are going to become a doctor and receive all sorts of compliments and support from others. Your grandmother can't believe her luck. But soon reality appears in the form of organic chemistry and turns into the need for its cramming, and you realize that you are doomed. At various specialized exhibitions, you can see how dozens of new companies are rushing into the industry. They spend money and time on creating a product, organizing its marketing, and renting the exhibition space, and all in order to get to the delicious market. Most of them will not be at the exhibition next year. They will calm down if they fail to overcome the pit. Similar things happen to people who dream of untold wealth and power at the disposal of the executive directors of Fortune 500 rating companies, personal planes, prestigious country clubs, unlimited freedom in decision-making. Who wouldn't want to become a modern royal? However, if you look at the resume of a typical executive director, you will find that he had to overcome the pit for a quarter of a century before getting the coveted position. For 25 long years, he was forced to grovel, keep his head down, and do what he was told. He had to achieve the planned indicators, work overtime more than others, and ingratiate himself with his next boss. Day after day, year after year. Being an executive director is not difficult. It is difficult to get this position. The reason for this is a huge pit blocking the way to it. If it were not difficult to overcome it, thousands of applicants would apply for this position, and executive directors would not receive their huge rewards. Scarcity is what creates value. There would be no pit, there would be no scarcity. Pay attention. Successful people do not just overcome the pit, gritting their teeth and demolishing its burdens. No, they plunge into it, squeeze on with all their might, change the rules of the game as they advance. The realization of the very fact of your being in the pit should not satisfy you. Fighting the pit reduces the time to overcome it. Schedule 2. Cul-de-sac. The cul-de-sac from the French impasse is obvious and does not need to be illustrated with a graph. This is a situation where you work, and nothing really changes. It doesn't get much better, nor does it get much worse. Everything remains as usual. Such classes are called unpromising. There is not much to tell about the cul-de-sac. When you realize that you are in such a dead end, quickly wind up the fishing rods. After all, staying at a dead end, you deprive yourself of the opportunity to do something else. The opportunity costs of investing your life in something unpromising will be too high. That's it. Only 2 graphs from all possible situations. Then, in addition, the third cliff. Persist in the pits if this case seems to work out, and retreat to save your resources if you find yourself in the cul-de-sac. Schedule 3. A rare but sinister cliff. As it turned out, scientists managed to find a way to process raw materials for cigarettes, which increases the degree of addiction to them. If you had to plot the pleasure you get from smoking, it would probably look like this. Getting out of a dead end is tedious. Climbing a cliff is fascinating. Until then, but both ways will not lead out of the pit. Both lead to destruction. With the exception of the unsightly ending, also known as emphysema, the mechanism of tobacco inculcation is a marketing dream come true, because everything is thought out so that it is almost impossible to quit smoking. The longer you smoke, the more inclined you are to continue this business. Over time, giving up this habit seems to be proceeding more and more painfully. I call this graph a cliff because it describes a situation where it is impossible to retreat until you fall down and everything else will fly in the same direction. No wonder it's hard for people to quit anything. But the fact is that the work of the seller is not equivalent to smoking cigarettes. This habit has nothing to do with a singer's career or an attempt to create a strong family relationship. In the vast majority of cases, one of the first two graphs corresponds to the situation. The Yama and cul-de-sac graphs are not linear. They do not bring a daily bit of relief, and they are just waiting for you to stumble. When it seems worth persevering, there is probably a pit ahead. Those engaged in tennis are waiting for a pit. The difference between an ordinary player and a local champion is not that the second is talented, but that he is able to overcome himself at times when it would be easier to retreat. Politicians are also waiting for a pit. It is much more pleasant to choose to win than to lose, and the whole political process is based on the fact that many take it and the majority retreats. The pit generates scarcity. Scarcity creates value. The cul-de-sac and the cliff lead to destruction. If you find yourself in one of these situations, you should back off. Not soon, not slowly. The greatest obstacle to our success in life, as far as I can judge, is the inability to retreat in time in such situations. One can complain that the advice offered by this book is ridiculously obvious. I mean, who doesn't understand that the secret of success is to be successful, that the best way to it is to offer an excellent product or service, and that one should not retreat in the face of difficulties. No matter how bitter it is to me, but it is not clear to you. It is gratifying that this is also not clear to your boss and your competitors. I want to say that you are aware of this, but I dare say that you are not doing anything about it. When the question is posed with an edge, when it is necessary to make a decision, do you retreat from a project that is not a pit? It will be easier in such a situation not to rock the boat, to push a little more, to avoid some inconveniences in connection with the change of path. What's the point of persisting in something you can't be first rate at? Are you investing your time and finances in excess, in colossally excess, in increasing your chances of taking a dominant position in the market? And if you don't have enough time and money, do you have the courage to choose a different, smaller market to conquer? When you start doing this, it means that it has become clear to you. Success happens in the pit. If you haven't guessed yet, the possible success lies in the pit. Those who dare to challenge the pit, those who spend their own time, effort and energy to get out of the pit, become first class. They manage to circumvent the system because instead of giving up in favor of another occupation, instead of being content with slightly above average results and what they have, they accept the challenge. For various reasons, they continue to search and move through the pit to the next level. Snowboarding is a trump sport. Dynamic, exciting, relatively moderate in financial costs, and also adds style to the image. Why, then, are there so few snowboarders? Because comprehending its basics is a painful attempt to get out of the pit. It takes several days to understand its basics, and during this time, You can get through a lot. It's easier to retreat than to continue classes. A brave decision is to endure adversity and find yourself on the other side, where you can fully enjoy the benefits arising from scarcity. A balanced decision is not to even try snowboarding, because you probably won't be able to overcome this pit. Stupid, get involved in this case, give him your strength, time and money, and then quit being just in the center of the pit. Few will make a brave decision and become first class. Those who are more prudent are likely to prefer a balanced decision, saving their resources for activities in which they have a true interest. Both solutions are excellent, but the last solution, the generally accepted solution, to try and then retreat, should be avoided by those who strive for success. Buckeye City New. Buckeye City and Sanders Skeet, pursued by Charles Syringa and people from the Pinkerton Agency, according to Butch's plan, left their pursuers overcoming an increasingly harsh path through the rocks. Butch knew that in the open, he and Sanders would not have a chance to break away from the chase. Only after leaving the impassable rocks behind, they could count on the fact that they would not see the agents again. It became more difficult to advance, but it was beneficial to the fugitives. However, the pursuers persisted. The heroes managed to escape from the chase only by convincing the agents of their death. You see, in the movies this works. Your market is a competitive arena, teeming with rivals who overcome obstacles every day. These obstacles are incredibly difficult, but only by overcoming them can you become a leader. In a competitive world, obstacles are your law. The more difficult they are, the higher your chances of getting rid of competitors. If these obstacles force you to retreat, well, it turns out everything was in vain. Jack Welch knew too. When Jack Welch reorganized General Electric, his most memorable decision was the following: if the division is not the first or second number in its industry, we need to get rid of it. Why sell a completely profitable division worth billions of dollars, whose market share is equal to a quarter? Because it distracts managers' attention by consuming and dissipating resources, capital, energy, and attention. And most importantly, it teaches employees to think that you cannot strive to become first class. Jack retreated from unpromising directions. This step allowed him to free up resources so that the remaining units could overcome the pit. What is the beauty of the wind? I must tell you that windsurfing is a simple activity if you do not take into account the wind. The wind, of course, adds to his cunning. It is not a problem to get good windsurfing equipment, and its technique itself is relatively simple. However, all the plans are thrown into disarray by the fact that the behavior of the wind is unpredictable. After all, he changes direction at the most inopportune moment for this. The same is true for customer service. It would be much easier if it wasn't addressed to consumers. In practice, any function of an organization is subject to such windy unpredictability. Accounting would not cause headaches if every incoming report was correct and arrived on time. Sales would be successful if it weren't for potential buyers who never buy anything from you. Marketing would go like clockwork if all your potential and current consumers thought the way you do. But not everything is so sad. Difficulties and unpredictability can become your helpers. After all, if there were no alternative, there would be no opportunity to make a profit. Windsurfing is interesting precisely because of its difficulty. The reason that makes people pay for the services of a high-class specialist lies in the fact that their diseases are unpredictable and difficult to diagnose. We are all here and now to solve difficult issues. The next time you are going to blaspheme an extremely obnoxious customer, or an office, or a search engine, think about the fact that this unsuccessful interaction is the best thing that could happen to you all day. If it weren't for him, they would have easily found a replacement for you. The pit is your best friend. Take a closer look at the pit. If I had to choose one brilliant idea for you in this book, I would prefer this one. The pit is the reason that you are right here and now. Whether you're carrying weights, discussing a future deal, sending out a resume, or hitting a tennis ball with a racket, you're making an investment. You have invested time, money, and energy to make this moment come. And they also got accessories, education, reputation, and all in order to resist this pit here and now. The pit is the reason that you are right here and now. Your task is not to bear the hardships of overcoming the pit. You should accept everything and consider the pit as a good opportunity, which is essentially what it is. I have no strength to wander anymore, he said, being mistaken. The perniciousness of diversification. Woodpeckers know. When faced with a pit, many people and organizations resort to diversification. If you can't get to the next level, the mind prompts you to direct the energy in some other direction. Therefore, we have record labels that represent the creativity of thousands of artists, instead of focusing on promoting just a few worthy ones. Therefore, we have job seekers who are not too competent in a dozen functional tasks, instead of a single one, but perfectly. Hard-working executive people see diversification as a natural outlet for their energy and enthusiasm. Diversification is perceived as a boon. Enter a new market, try your luck at work in another field, do another sport. Who knows, maybe we'll get lucky this time, but still, the real success falls to the lot of the possessed. The concentration that leads through the pit to its opposite edge is rewarded by the market, which is in search of first class. A woodpecker who has fucked 20 times each of 1,000 trees may not get anything, but he is always in business. And after hitting one tree 20,000 times, he will have breakfast. Before entering a new market, think about whether it might be worth trying to overcome the pit and emerge victorious in your current field. Most are afraid to retreat. It is easier to remain mediocre than to resist the mundane and retreat. It's not easy to retreat. To do this, you will have to admit to yourself that you will never become first class, at least in what you are doing now. Therefore, it is easier to drive away this thought, get rid of it, come to terms with your own mediocrity. What a waste! Evil takes. I am for sure infuriated by all these worthy organizations that persist in dead-end directions instead of retreating and finding a better use for their resources. Annoying people who waste their time and money in an attempt to overcome the pit, which, as they should know, is too deep and extended to overcome it with the resources they have. However, what angers me most is that it takes so long to explain such simple things. Schwartz overcame the pit. In the comprehension of the pit, an important point is the awareness of its reality. Recognition of its existence will be the first step towards overcoming it. Whenever Men's Health magazine puts another character with enviable ABS cubes on the cover, the revenue of press dealers grows. That's because if every man had a relief press, it's unlikely that they would buy a magazine advising how to get the same one. The scarcity of such a feature makes it attractive. Bodybuilding is an original activity. For the most part, the first minute or two, you load the muscles only to tire them, and only the last few seconds of the approach make them grow in volume. We all load our muscles every day, but they don't grow. Most of us are not drawn to Mr. Universe because we stop straining our muscles before an excessive load on them causes them to grow. This is a natural reaction because muscle fatigue creates a feeling of discomfort. Successful athletes pay their bills for the first minute or two and then receive a reward. Losers pay the same bills, only they stop exercising a few seconds earlier than they should. To retreat is a natural human reaction to discomfort. But it is this reflex that generates scarcity. The advice is simple. It is foolish to retreat if you have undertaken to overcome the pit. If your idea is worth something, then capitulating in the process of overcoming the pit will mean that you have wasted your time. By abusing such behavior, you will turn into a systematic apostate who undertakes a lot but brings little to the end. So, if you understand that you will not be able to overcome the pit, then it makes no sense to mess with it. When you learn this simple rule, you will become much more picky about your own aspirations. The mindset of champions. Champions of any kind have everything they want. Thanks to their unique abilities, they have extra income, piety, and opportunities. Because consumers and employers have a very narrow choice in terms of the exceptional. The base of offers of a champion real estate agent is 5 to 10 times larger than that of an ordinary broker. The champion lawyer is always loaded with orders, regardless of his area of specialization. The fee of the champion of musicians is thousands of times higher than the one-time earnings of an average musician. The champion is first class in his field. Do you want to become a champion? Then find yourself an area of activity in which there is a huge pit, a barrier separating those who are struggling and those who have succeeded. Then you will have to overcome the pit. Find yourself on the other side of it. Not everyone is capable of this, otherwise there would be no champions. If you decided to go this way, then you realized the existence of the pit and believed in your ability to overcome it. In fact, the pit provides you with a huge advantage because it makes the whole idea worthwhile and protects you from the encroachments of competitors. However, this alone is not enough. You not only need to find a pit for yourself to overcome, at the same time, you should get out of all the cul-de-sacs in which you are currently squandering yourself, and now to leave projects and initiatives that have no prospects. It is not easy to do this, but it is vital. Superiority over 98% of its competitors was considered normal. However, in the world of Google, such an advantage loses its meaning because all your competitors are a click away from you. It doesn't matter what the nature of your business is. The only thing that can give an advantage is the first-class status. 7 obstacles on the way to first-class status. Time runs out and you retreat. The money runs out and you retreat. Panic sets in and you retreat. Take the matter lightly, retreat, lose interest or enthusiasm, or are content with your mediocre position, retreat. You focus on a short-term result, not a long-term perspective. You retreat when the short-term result disappoints. You mistakenly choose an occupation for yourself with the goal of becoming first class, for which you have no abilities. By saying you, I mean your team, your company, or strictly speaking, you, a job seeker, employee or entrepreneur. Regarding these 7 restrictions, it is important to remember that you can pre-evaluate your chances of avoiding them. That is, to estimate in advance whether you will have the resources and will to reach the end of the path. If you have ever failed in your attempt to become first class, in most cases, it was either due to an incorrect preliminary assessment or because you capitulated prematurely. Or maybe the reason is the limitations of your abilities. Maybe you, all of you, don't have enough of them to become first class. It is not excluded. I could even insist on the probability of this, whether you are a cellist or a speed skater. However, in some areas, examples that come to my mind, such a thing is unlikely. You have enough abilities. The only question is whether you will be able to find the shortest path to their exhaustive implementation. The reason for the omnipotence of the pit. The existence of the pit is possible due to the existence of pyramid schemes. A pyramid is a scheme in which people at the base of the pyramid support its top. However, the pyramid is not always a scam. It underlies a huge number of mechanisms, much bigger than you might think. For example, many sign up for wellness centers. A large number of clients allows such a center to keep prices for its services at an acceptable level, but it is small in itself, and only a small part of those who signed up are engaged in it. The whole system is built on this. If the center was visited by all its members, it is unlikely that you could find a free bike there or afford to pay membership fees. For $10 a month, including postage, Netflix offers to rent an unlimited number of 9 discs. How is this possible? If you watch a movie and send it back on the same day when it is delivered by mail, then you will master no more than 6 discs in a month, just for $12. Of course, the whole trick is that for one person watching 6 movies a month, there are many subscribers who have lost interest in this and order 1 movie a month or order nothing at all. The latter also finance zealous members. Netflix, of course, encourages you to watch as many discs as possible, making you a loyal consumer of it. However, its entire business model would have crumbled if it had not been based on inert subscribers who used rental services only once or twice. For a long time, airlines sold more tickets for their flights than the actual number of seats allowed, counting on the profit from the passengers who did not show up. Politicians rely entirely on the fact that a lazy and ill-informed man in the street will not vote. Such Philistines pay taxes, thereby supporting the activity of those few who actively participate in political life. The money machine of college football teams is also based on a pyramid model, which involves players who want to get into the National Football League but never get there. Whatever you do for the sake of earning money or entertainment, the principle of apostasy is probably at the heart of this system. Apostasy breeds scarcity. Scarcity creates value, and value is at the top of the pyramid. In the book The Wizard of Oz, there is an unforgettable character, the man behind the screen, giving Ellie and her friends an incredibly difficult, almost impossible task. The carefree life of this great and terrible in the Emerald City is provided by its petitioners, who are sent to carry out impossible tasks. No wonder we are retreating. The system forces us. 8 types of pit. 8 types of pits are listed below, protecting various systems from encroachments of organizations and individuals. If one of these pits gets in your way, you will have to make a choice. You can decide beforehand to do everything possible to overcome the pit, realizing that this will be a very difficult task. Or retreat at the very beginning, refusing in advance to even approach her. Capitulation inside the pit will turn into a waste of time and effort. Production pit. It's easy and great to start building something in your own garage. It is not easy and expensive to purchase a mold for injection molding, develop an integrated circuit, or establish Massachusetts production. The time and effort required to increase production volumes and form a pit. The pit imposes restrictions and creates obstacles for those brave who are trying to increase the scale of production. These craftsmen at the local craft fair are going out of their way because they do not have enough courage or the means to promote their work to a new level. The pit of sales. Ideas get realized when someone like you starts selling them to stores, companies, consumers, or even voters. But as soon as you need the services of professional sellers who are able to increase sales, a pit immediately begins to loom on the horizon. In almost any field, the one who first gathers a powerful and aggressive army of sellers gets an advantage. Pit education. Your career starts as soon as you leave school, but Yama warns you in those moments when you need to learn something new, rethink existing skills. A doctor who sacrifices an entire year to get a specialization will secure a reward for several decades to come. Risk pit. Those who achieve everything on their own learn a bitter lesson. At some point, the opportunity to pay for everything out of your own pocket disappears. Renting large areas or investing in new technology involves risk. Successful entrepreneurs understand the difference between investing in the ability to overcome the pit and investing with an unpredictable result. The pit of relationships. Many people and organizations will be happy to help you, but later. Only after you spend some time and effort interacting with them now, even if such interaction will be burdensome for you. Remember the guy who started in the correspondence processing department, always ready to do your errand or stay overtime to help. Now he is an executive director. The relationships that he created earlier at an expensive price at that time later paid for themselves. Those short-sighted who do not want to come to the rescue or do a favor now will never overcome the pits of relationships. After all, they do not build relationships ahead of time when it is often associated with inconveniences and does not seem absolutely necessary. The pit of the worldview. So far, you have been guided by a set of certain prerequisites. Abandoning them and turning to new premises of a wider spectrum may be exactly the push that will allow you to move to the next level. All those ascetics who managed to reform their organizations and industries, from Martin Luther King to Richard Branson, did it in a similar way, overcoming the pit of the worldview. The ego pit. When it comes exclusively to you, everything seems to be simple. However, by giving up trying to keep everything under control and joining the organization, you can get an advantage. Many are not capable of this. They don't want to lose control or leave the stage. They're stuck in this hole. Distribution pit. Some retailers, local shopping malls, and the internet open up easy ways to distribute your products, while others, such as Target, are forced to invest in solving this problem, which may pay off. However, the product will have a better chance of achieving significant sales if it is presented on the Walmart network than on the internet. Why is that? It's all about scarcity. There are any goods on the internet, but not everyone can get to the Walmart counter. Recognize ahead of time. As follows from the example below, it is easy to determine whether a pit or a culdo is waiting for you. It is difficult in this case to find the determination to do something about it. Optimistic entrepreneurs and employees who take such a serious matter lightly, risking getting involved in something resembling a space shuttle launch project. There is nothing wrong with optimism. The problem arises when an optimistic attitude prevents you from making a difficult choice in a dead-end situation. Put an end to space shuttles. The reusable spacecraft launch program is not a pit at all, but a typical cul-de-sac. Defending this program, its defenders do not claim that over time it will become safer and cheaper or more effective. Everything is much simpler. No one has dared to abolish it yet. But does it make sense to invest in something that has no prospects for improvement? If this program was closed, there would be an urgent need for its alternative. The lack of an opportunity to get into space would force us to look for new ways to solve this problem, less expensive and more effective. So why isn't it being cancelled? Why not back off? For all the same reasons, due to the fact that it is easier day by day to persist in the usual, in what does not violate the way of life, in what does not cause discomfort. As the Declaration of Independence warns us, the experience of the past shows that people are more inclined to tolerate evil while it is still tolerable than to use their right to abolish habitual forms of life. Will you have the determination to retreat once you find yourself in the cul-de-sac? Death Valley. In any industry, the urgent task of each of its players is to create a hole so deep and long that potential rivals will not be able to overcome it. Microsoft has succeeded. It has established so many relationships and set so many standards that hardly anyone will be able to challenge the primacy of Word or Excel applications, at least until the PC platform is replaced. Intuition paved the way for the company through the pit, and now its accounting program Quicken is as reliably protected from the encroachments of competitors as its Word text editor. Break through the barriers erected by competitors, and you will become a caliph for an hour or two. But wait, you will object. Isn't Google on the heels of Microsoft, developing online versions of spreadsheets and text editors? Perhaps. However, even the almighty Google understands that it will not be able to claim the laurels of Microsoft until there is a change of platforms from PC to the web. Microsoft has dug such a deep and expensive hole that it is simply impossible to overcome it. However, today, the prospect of switching to a new platform opens Google a new, not-so-thorny path. Apple managed to do a similar trick with iTunes and iPod. Initially, she took advantage of the new platform to destroy the Tower of Babel records. She was not satisfied with this alone, but did everything possible to stop all possible attempts by competitors to find themselves on the other side of the pit. Professional communities do the same. Lawyers, for example, constantly complicated the task of passing the exam for the right to practice law, thereby expanding the pit and making life even more carefree for their colleagues. The main thing in life. If you are able to overcome the pit, if you are able to persevere when the system assumes that you will give up, you will be able to achieve outstanding results. People who have overcome the pit are truly in short supply, which is why they are valuable. The first-class status will open up to you advantages in terms of income, attention to your person, privileges and reverence, available only to selected people, organizations or brands. A character with an enviable ABS who graced the cover of a men's magazine because it turned out that many retreated on the way to what he managed to achieve. You already know this well. Also, they are not sown with bast. Throughout your life, you have repeatedly been convinced that the reward is given to the one who does not retreat. So what will you say? Why repeat it once again, and then? It's all about your attitude to it. You have been used to thinking since childhood that to retreat means to suffer defeat. Capitulation is perceived as a failure, as an admission of one's own insolvency. Of course, you did everything you could, but it wasn't enough. Vince Lombardi knows what he's talking about. If you were better, you wouldn't give up. However, I would like you to see the positive aspects in the act of apostasy or rejection. It's not about avoiding remorse due to failure. It is important to understand that by retreating in endeavors that are not feasible for you, or those for which you have mediocre inclinations, or capitulating to the situation of a cul-de-sac, you release the resources necessary to overcome your main pit. If you decide to retreat, retreat before you start. Reject the conventions of the system. Do not get involved in the game if you realize that you will not be able to become first class. Mediocrity is the lot of losers. Don't just back off at the proper time. Most of us don't have the determination to do that. Worse, sometimes falling into a hole, we do not retreat. We put up with an ordinary situation. The most common reaction when entering a pit is caution. Routine work, harmless actions, impeccable deeds, finding themselves in a pit, most adapt to it and strive to achieve success through a strategy of moderation. That is why so few eventually manage to become first class. Being a champion means being able to do something exceptional. You should not suffer deprivation in the pit, but use it as an opportunity to create something so exceptional that people will have nothing else to do but gossip about it, recommend it, and naturally give preference to it. The next time you find yourself putting up with mediocrity and seemingly ready to retreat, remember, you have only two reasonable options: to retreat or become exceptional. Mediocrity is the lot of losers. Am I overreacting? And your time and efforts, careers and reputation, are they so important if you squander them to remain mediocre? It may seem that being ordinary is a safe strategy. However, this is not the case. This is a strategy of inconspicuousness, the last thing that remains, the path of least resistance. The temptation to be ordinary is one of the forms of apostasy, an opportunity to avoid attention to yourself. You deserve more than an ordinary position. Systematic apostates stand in queues for a long time. After years of observing the behavior of shoppers in supermarkets, I have identified three main strategies for standing in line at the checkout. The supermarket next door to me is probably the same as yours. 4 or 5 working cash registers. If you carefully observe the buyers, you will find that they all follow one of the 3 strategies. The first is to get in the shortest queue and stand in it no matter what happens. The second strategy is to take a short queue and switch to another one, at most once if the first queue is stalled, but go only once. The third strategy is to choose the shortest queue and, standing in it, continue to observe the rest. Change the queue whenever its tail gets shorter somewhere. Continue running until the approach to the cash register. The inefficiency of the third strategy is obvious. Every time the queue changes, you have to start all over again. Striving for a quick result, you definitely spend time and energy throwing back and forth. Queues form everywhere. Maybe you also have a friend, an avid entrepreneur, who is starting his 6th or 12th venture. He jumps from one possibility to another. New, the best, not so difficult as soon as it encounters an obstacle. And while he is in search, he will not be able to succeed in any of them. He will not be able to, because he constantly changes the queue, in which he basically lacks patience. Although his repair is full of enthusiasm, the costs will not pay off until he gets out of the pit. Many entrepreneurs have been very successful in their endeavors, but they retreat long before they pay their bills. It is also bad that starting all over again, they cannot boast of the fortitude necessary to wait for their turn. Especially if the project is grandiose. This disease happens not only in entrepreneurs. Advertisers rushing from one agency to another, or constantly changing advertising channels, end up blowing fortunes to the wind. If 10 advertising appeals are required to achieve the desired effect, and you have moved only 8, these fluctuations will result in a considerable expenditure of money and time. The sellers are deserters. According to the results of a well-known study, probably invented an ordinary seller leaves attempts to conclude a deal after the fifth contact with a potential buyer. He comes to the conclusion that he is wasting his own and someone else's time and abandons this idea. Who would doubt that this study also showed that 80% of these buyers conclude a deal after the seller's seventh attempt? It is a pity that the rest of the traders lack perseverance. Maybe it's really necessary to constantly pull people, or is the 7 a magic number, or is the key to sales in an aggressive approach to them? I don't think so. I don't think that successful sellers are those who constantly get in their eyes, whine about the deal, act impudently. I believe that the lesson that can be learned from the results of the study is this: the process of selling involves emotional contact, not the enumeration of facts. You can present the facts through a PN presentation posted on the website. Potential buyers, and you among them, if you happen to purchase something, are experts in assessing what the seller has in mind. They have radars perfectly tuned to sellers, allowing them to measure sincerity or determine its absence. If the person who wants to sell thinks, well, if he does not buy this one, in a bet to someone else, the buyer's radar unmistakably captures such a careless attitude. When the seller is focused on the long term and seeks to conclude a deal for mutual benefit, his signal will be perceived clearly and positively. Understand the following: if you are not able to deftly get out of the pit, you should retreat, and immediately. Because if you are just starting to establish contact with 80% of potential consumers on your list, this means that you are not only wasting your own time, but also neglecting the remaining 20% that can ensure your success. I repeat, overcoming the pit is an effective strategy. Effective not because it teaches the seller to bother customers, but because it completely changes the routine of his working day. We are not talking about moral attitudes now, but about a strategic choice. A good signal from the seller to the buyer sounds like this: we will get out of this hole together, because this is important for both of us. Meeting with the pit. You can be sure that your product is first class, but in fact, no one cares about it except for a handful of his admirers. You are busy promoting your idea in any of the possible directions. Meanwhile, most consumers don't give a damn about your idea, or those fancy high-heeled shoes, or some kind of revolutionary glue formula. They are waiting for this new thing to be tested, become a standard, and the object of massive advertising. So much for the pit of market perception. Successful marketers do not retreat. They are taken to storm the pit, arouse interest in their product, distinguish it from a number of similar ones, improve, and others at this time are scouring in search of another immediate hit. Therefore, while one publisher is rushing from author to author, looking for a ready-made bestseller, another is nurturing people like Drive, Seuss, or Stephen King, gradually forming the writer's audience, while a certain nonprofit organization jumps from one potential source of grants to another, hoping to get hold of funds for a particular project. Its successful rival consistently adheres to the chosen course, explains its advantages, pays the bills, concentrating efforts only on a few charitable foundations, until it receives funding from them. Gorilla Glue overcame the pit. Jimmy Choo and Svok did it. Not overnight, but step by step, until a critical Massachusetts is formed. Job seekers face a pit, because our departments take care of it. Where people don't come to your house to offer you a job. They put up obstacles, such as the need to send a resume, put on a business suit, or fly to Cleveland. For screening out candidates who are not serious enough about the prospect of getting a job. We are captivated by the story of how the saleswoman of a local shop becomes a famous actress, or a classmate gets an enviable position by simply visiting a recruitment agency in college. The author, having lit up only once on Oprah's show, wakes up famous tomorrow, and the rock band gets a contract. By sending their demo recording to the recording company, these miracles captivate with their simplicity. It is not difficult to succumb to the temptation of easy money and the race for innovations. The problem, however, is that it generates dependence and weakens endurance. The consciousness tuned to such a way suggests that if something does not bring results today, why bother with it until tomorrow? But the fact is that only a small fraction of the audience is interested in something radically new. Most are waiting for approbation, certification, and time verification. Various kinds of Microsoft are slowly swarming, updating version 1 to version 2, realizing that by the time version 3 appears, the world will change its attitude towards them for the better. Microsoft has failed with Windows twice, soared 4 times, and sell 3 times, following the idea of persevering, overcoming the pit, changing tactics without regret, but never changing strategy. Procter & Gamble has destroyed hundreds of products. Starbucks abandoned the idea of CD burning machines. The Social Protection Program has been canceled dozens of times. Don't stick to your chosen tactics at any cost. It is better to determine once and for all whether you are playing in this market or not, and if you are playing, storm the pit. Consumers want to make sure of your perseverance. They need to catch a signal that you are serious, have sufficient influence in the market, and your product is universally recognized and reliable. The bulk of buyers, regardless of the specifics of the product, are formed by people who are in the middle of the normal distribution curve. Those who want to buy proven and good quality things. The strategy of accompanying the goods all the way through the pit is effective because it allows you to win the attention of an even larger consumer audience. But if your product is not functional and the service is unpopular even among fanatical adherents of new products, you should not persist in tactics just because you initially chose it. Your strategy to remain a reliable supplier in your chosen market will be sound even when you have to renounce your product. What exactly do you do? Yes, you need to renounce the product, its individual characteristics, or design solutions. Renounce regularly if you want to develop and have the resources to do so. However, you don't need to renounce the market strategy or market niche. Success in business does not come suddenly. It is not noticeable until it is properly ripe. To retreat does not mean to wait. The opposite of apostasy is devoting oneself to another endeavor, developing a new, inspiring strategy that can completely eliminate the existing problem. It would be a mistake to perceive the pit as a static formation, to see yourself as a passive passenger of a boat slowly crossing this obstacle. The pit is not permanent. It reacts to your actions towards it. It is very likely, and this happens very often, that aggressive actions on your part will seriously worsen the situation in the pit or seriously improve it. Nobody knows that. We must try. When the discomfort becomes so unbearable that you are ready to retreat, you turn into someone who has nothing to lose, and the one who has nothing to lose gains a certain strength. You can go all in, challenge the position of the authorities, question the undoubted, get to the heart of the problem, get so deep that you will find yourself on the other side of it. After working for a long time in one company, David ended up stuck in a dead end, so deaf that he almost decided to quit. His boss seemed like a monster to him. Daily work did not bring anything of value either to his resume or to his life. He was just desperate. And David went all in. He met with his boss's boss. Unheard of insubordination. And calmly stated his problem. He said that he would probably have to resign. However, appreciating his company, he would like to offer an alternative option. And offered. The meeting ended with him receiving a significant promotion, a new work task, and a new boss. If he had kept silent about the negative aspects, worried about the short term, and was not ready to quit on that very day, none of this would have happened. He wasn't bluffing. David was really ready to either quit or do something new, rededicate himself to the company, and do something great. Capitulation in the pit is a premature and unwise decision. Retreating, people are often guided by short-term benefits. In other words, if something causes discomfort, it should be dropped, they think. In 1988, Joe Biden stopped his participation in the presidential election campaign for a very trivial reason. As of today, he incorrectly indicated the author of the quote. However, at that moment the discomfort was so strong that Biden and his consultants did not see a way out of the situation. So they capitulated. 18 years later, Biden announces his intention to run again. Shame and shame. If in 1988 he had realized that at that moment he had nothing to lose, he could have radically changed the tone of his company. By modifying the pit and making his way through it, he would have a chance to bypass his opponents. When a child leaves football or karate classes, he does it not because he has weighed all the long-term consequences of his act. It's just that the coach is yelling, and training is no longer a pleasure. It's easier to quit. For most people, the discomfort in the short term outweighs the long-term benefits. That is why it is so important to emphasize for yourself all the long-term advantages associated with refusing to retreat. It is necessary to remember the carefree life on the other side of the pit, because it will be much easier to overcome discomfort due to another unsuccessful call to a potential customer if you draw a picture of a successful sales career in detail. And classes in a noisy college classroom won't seem so boring if you imagine graduation day. More clarity can be achieved by referring to all possible indicators. And if you start tracking your Alex rating on the internet, or the rating of your class, or the size of your market share, or your own place in the hierarchy of the sales team, then you will be aware daily of how far you have come to the top, which will help you painlessly endure short-term adversity. No one stops running at the 25th mile of the Boston Marathon. It is not difficult to imagine the schedule of the outflow of participants at the marathon distance, who will retreat when the finish line is already visible. Persistent people are able to visualize the concept of light at the end of the tunnel, whereas others cannot. At the same time, reasonable people look at things realistically and will not imagine light where it cannot be. If you work in a print edition of a megapolis, you can look closely and see that there is no light at the end of this career tunnel. Its circulation is falling, and will fall even faster. Most paper media have little chance of moving their traditional business model to the internet rails. As a result, every day spent in the editorial office of such a publication will be slightly worse than the previous one, and every such day has a detrimental effect on your career from a strategic point of view. After all, you are improving in something that is not very useful, and besides, you are one day behind those who spent time on this to comprehend something more useful. The only reason to stay there is short-term inconvenience due to dismissal. The winners also know that by going through these inconveniences, they will thereby prevent much greater discomfort that awaits them later. This is also true of the strategic management of organizations. The decision to retreat or endure is very simple. Does the light at the end of the tunnel deserve to feel discomfort in connection with overcoming the pit for its sake? If you don't expect to be the first, you can retreat, nay. Step back. Sometimes a retreat is commonplace. You should step back. If you are walking down a road leading to a dead end, it is necessary to retreat, even when a cliff looms ahead. It would be wise to save yourself if overcoming the pit of your business is not worth the reward that is due for it. Leaving unpromising projects is crucial for finding promising projects. You don't have enough time, enthusiasm, or resources to become first class in both. Abandoning tactics or abandoning strategy. Okay, let it sound like heresy, but I'm advocating an attack of apostasy, frequent apostasy. However, we are not talking about abandoning a long-term strategy, a strategy for anything, your career, enrichment, family relationships, sales, but about abandoning tactics that do not bring results. Capitulation in the situation of cul-de-sac should not be regarded as a moral fall. This is a reasonable decision. Recognizing an approaching cliff ahead of time is not a sign of weakness. On the contrary, it is evidence of insight and courage that will allow you to release energy in order to get out of the pit. That voice is in your head. Something tells me that at this very moment, you started an argument with yourself. You have a lot of rational arguments in your head. You thoroughly explain to yourself why all these cul-de-sacs in which you are currently staying are not dead ends at all, but they are dead ends. You fervently defend the mediocre activities carried out by your organization. Isn't that the best thing you can do under these circumstances? No, not the best. You don't want to back down. It's painful, it's problematic, so you don't back down. However, you should. Retreat is a reasonable strategy. Doug recently got another promotion. He works for a software development company and has worked in many positions over the past 14 years. For the first 7 or 8 years, he worked in the direction of business development and sales. For some time, I served Microsoft orders, flew to Redmond, Washington every 6 weeks or so. Those were difficult times for his family. He worked purposefully and successfully. 2 years ago, Doug received a significant promotion. He headed an entire division, 150 employees, the second largest in the company. He set to work with enthusiasm. In addition to business trips, which began to take even more time, he successfully solved some internal management issues. Last month, for various reasons, he was transferred to a similar position. The same hierarchical level, but now another department of analysts is accountable to it. Now he is responsible for creating strategic alliances. He is respected, does almost any job, and earns well. Imagine what kind of conversation you could have with him. "Yeah, you've done a lot of work here," Duck would have objected. "Yes, 14 years is a long time, but during this time, I have worked in 7 positions. When I joined the company, she was a newcomer, and now we are divisions of Seska. We have to solve new tasks, although it is very convenient to get to work. Let's kill him." Doug needs to quit the company for a very simple reason. He is branded. Everyone in the company knows who Doug is, what to expect from him, and what he is capable of. It sounds tempting to climb the career ladder by starting in the correspondence processing department, but in practice this is unlikely. Duck has reached his ceiling. He will not be thrown on a new front of work, promoted, or nominated for the position of president of the company. Duck, regardless of what he is actually capable of, has stopped its development, at least in the eyes of his superiors. If he leaves the company and gets a job in another one, he will have to recreate his own image. No one in the new company will remember young Doug as he was 10 years ago. A new Dag with infinite potential and a short past will appear before them. Our parents and the older generation believe that we should work at the same job for 5, 10 years, or even all our lives. However, in a world in which companies come and go, appearing out of the blue, growing to a rating of 500 fortunes, and subsequently disappearing without a trace, such a thing is simply impossible. The whole point is the following, as I told Doug about it. It's time to look for a new job. This is when you don't need it. You should change jobs before you start to feel comfortable in it. Come on, challenge yourself. Arrange a promotion for yourself. You are indebted to your own career and skills. If your job is just a cul-de-sac, you should quit it or admit that your career is over. To retreat does not mean to be defeated. A strategic retreat is a conscious decision made on the basis of available alternatives. If you realize that you are at an impasse, despite the fact that there are other ways to use your resources, the decision to retreat will be reasonable and reasonable. In contrast, failure is the end of your dream. It lies in wait for you when you give up, have no other options, or retreat so often that there is no more time or resources left. It's easy to wring your hands about failure, whereas a reasonable retreat is a great way to avoid it. You can master it, but why? To master it is somehow to bring the matter to an end. You can master a bad job or a difficult task. The problem, however, is that your attempts will never lead to an exceptional result. Mediocre work brings mediocre results. In addition, she is often a cul-de-sac. That's why any attempt to master something is just a waste of time and effort. If you have nothing else to do, you'd better back off. It is better to retreat than to master, since the first one will make you free to improve in something else. Never back down. An extremely bad recommendation, like an indecent joke for a teacher. Don't back down. Don't quit, don't stop. Never stop peeing in bed. Don't quit that job at McDonald's that you got after graduating from high school, selling further goods that have long been outdated. Wait a minute, did that notorious coach Vince Lombardi say that retreating is bad? In reality, this is bad as a short-term strategy, but retreating with an eye to the distant future is an excellent idea. I believe that the following was meant: never give up on something that has good potential in the long run, just because you can't cope with momentary difficulties. Now this is good advice. Pride is the enemy of the cunning apostate. Richard Nixon sacrificed thousands of innocent lives on both sides by refusing to back down in the Vietnam War. The only reason he didn't back down earlier was pride. The same pride that keeps a person in the same job for years, which has long lost all attraction for him. The same pride makes the owner continue to keep the restaurant where no one comes in for a snack. What makes you persist and stay in cul-de-sac? Maybe pride. However, by retreating, you can feel quite safe, because it will be found that wounded pride is not fatal. Having gathered the courage, drowning out the voice of the ego, reading, "Everything is gone, Chief, you can retreat, and that's it." If you are held only by pride, if there is no pit to get out of it, it turns out that you are most likely spending a huge amount of time and money to protect something that will heal long before the wedding. A Harvard Medical School diploma is not a reason to persist. Popular writer Michael Crichton retreated, being at the professional top of the career ladder. By the time he decided to leave medicine, he already had a Harvard Medical School and a position as a researcher at the Salk Institute for Biological Research, which guaranteed him a cloudless career as a doctor or scientist. He exchanged all this for the unpredictable fate of the writer. Crichton lacked the courage to cut people, and he decided that a medical career would not bring him joy, regardless of whether he could succeed in it or not. And he does not have to spend the rest of his life on things that do not bring him pleasure. Just because he graduated from Harvard and got a position as a researcher, that is, he got out of the hole, Crichton stepped over his pride and retreated. That's how he got over the past and started all over again. And if such a thing turned out to be on his shoulder, then it will be even more so for you. 3 questions before retreating. If you are thinking of retreating or persevering, then you have succeeded as well as me. Understanding that the option of retreat deserves your close attention is the first step on the way to becoming first class. Now you need to ask yourself 3 questions. Question 1. Am I panicking? You should not retreat in a hurry. Panic is never thought out. It rolls over and absorbs in an instant. To retreat, having lost your head, is unsafe and expensive. The best of the apostates, as we have seen, decide in advance when to retreat. You can always retreat later, so wait until the panic settles down to make a decision. When the compulsion to compromise, surrender, or humility becomes maximum, your desire to retreat should be less than usual. This decision is made in 1 second, but the mentioned situations are just the most unfavorable for this. The reason why so many retreat while in the pit is that without a compass or a map, the easiest way out is to give up. Although this option is the simplest, it is also the least successful. Question 2. Who am I trying to influence? Are you trying to succeed in the market, get a job, build muscles? Are you thinking of retreating? It means that you almost certainly failed to succeed in attempts to influence. If you have unsuccessfully visited a potential customer a dozen times, you will understandably be disappointed and will think about giving up further attempts. When your boss does not give his feet rest, thoughts of dismissal come into his head. If you are a marketer promoting a product that no one is interested in, you will start thinking about how to get rid of it and find yourself another one. In the process of influencing an individual, perseverance must have a limit. It is not difficult to cross the line between commitment and importunity. If you have repeatedly and unsuccessfully tried to influence someone, it may be time to give up further attempts. The behavior of an individual or organization and the behavior of a market consisting of many people are different. An individual can be on his mind with his own worldview. He has thought of something for himself, and in order to succeed, you need to convince him, and it is difficult, almost impossible, to convince anyone. However, if you are trying to influence the market, the rules will be different. It's clear that some people in the market know about you, and some people don't even accept you. However, most have never heard of you. The market has no collective consciousness. Different people are looking for different things on it. Sergey Brin, one of the founders of Google, told me the following: "We knew that every day the Google search engine would get better as we improved it. We also knew that sooner or later everyone would try it out. Therefore, it was in our interest for users to try out the system later when it gets better. That's why we've never been in a hurry to introduce her early. Better tomorrow than today." Convincing an individual is like climbing a wall. If you manage to climb over it from the first few attempts, consider it done. If it didn't work out, you will most likely feel how the wall becomes more and more impregnable with each attempt. In contrast, the impact on the market is more like climbing a mountain. You can advance step by step, and as you climb, it becomes easier to walk. People in the market communicate with each other. They are subject to mutual influence. Therefore, each of your successful steps is enhanced to some extent. The third question: how do I measure my progress? If you're trying to succeed at work, building relationships, or solving a problem, you're either moving forward, rolling back, or marking time. You have only one option out of three: to succeed, to finally reach that notorious light at the end of the tunnel. You need some progress. It doesn't matter how humble he is. Often we persist in situations when, as it seems to us, it will be too painful to retreat. Therefore, we decide to leave everything as it is. We do not retreat because it's easier this way. Such a decision to persist in the absence of progress is a waste of time and effort. In vain, if you take into account the opportunity costs. At this time, you could be doing something much more useful and enjoyable. Progress does not necessarily find its expression in the advancement of the career ladder. It may not manifest itself so obviously, but still not be an empty spell. The rules of the type are alive, and that's good. The task in this case will be to find landmarks in the places where you expected to find them before. If you run a small company that serves several customers who are quite satisfied with you, continue your business because these customers will be able to bring you new ones. Sometimes progress is measured by increasing the number of referrals or sales volume. The sequences of market presence alone can justify your efforts. However, if there is no rumor about your business, there is no influx of consumers, no movement forward. What are you actually messing with it for? When you try to influence the market as a whole, the price of your persistence will be very high. You probably need to be ready to willingly retreat from marketing tactics that do not bring results, or even abandon some of the functional characteristics of the product that do not attract your target audience. However, your loyalty to the market must be unconditional. It is much easier and cheaper to build a foundation in one market than to rush from one to another in search of quick success. Let's take a closer look at this point. Dismissal from work is not a rejection of the search for the best source of food, an opportunity to prove yourself or to exert influence. Final retirement from work is not a surrender. Work is just a tactic, a way to get what you really want. As soon as this activity leads you to a dead end, it makes sense to leave it and continue searching for broad opportunities in the market, because every day of waiting pushes back the deadline for the fulfillment of your dreams. The above is also true for organizations. The essence of your company is not expressed through its tactics. The success or failure of an organization is determined by its efforts to achieve strategic goals, and when the tactics used no longer promote progress through the pit, but directs to the cul-de-sac, you should change tactics while maintaining orientation to a strategic goal. The temptation not to retreat, as well as all these stories about how to overcome, are based on the examples of those who move through the market. A writer whose manuscripts were returned to the publisher 30 times before it was finally published. A celebrity waitress who worked for decades in a diner. All these are examples of how persistent movement across the market is rewarded. But do you know any examples of how someone who persists in his dead-end work, in dead-end relationships or unpromising negotiations with a potential customer, his counterpart suddenly declared, "Why, I admire your perseverance. Let's sort out our relationship." This simply does not happen. Here's a task for you. Write down under what circumstances and how soon you are inclined to retreat, and then follow this. Make a decision in advance about when to retreat. The recommendations of marathon runner Dick Collins are quoted below. Before the race, determine the conditions under which you will be forced to withdraw from the race so that you do not whine during the race. "My legs hurt. I'm dehydrated, tired, drowsiness is piling up. Still this wind, it's cold, convincing myself to stop running in this way. If your decision is based on momentary feelings, it will most likely not be the right one. So, rule number 1. When a retreat is used as a strategic tool that frees your hands to find the most optimal alternatives in the market, you need to develop a strategy for yourself before discomfort appears. Like a venture capitalist who forces the board of directors to develop a plan in case the initial estimate is exceeded, every person and organization who wants to use a retreat strategy as a competitive tool should outline when to do it. And if it is unwise to retreat while in the pit, then retreating when you find yourself in the cul-de-sac is the height of rationality. Difficult in this case will be the need to make a decision when you are overcome by stress, frustration, or apathy. That's why it is necessary to develop a plan in advance. Deflated tires. We choose a suitable pit for ourselves. Let's take a bicycle tire for example. If she is not inflated at all, then the first 5 kilograms of air pressure will not affect her condition in any way. But 5 extra kilograms pumped into a fully inflated tire can break it, nullifying all your efforts. Only the last 5 kilograms pay off, those last 5 kilograms that completely inflated the tire. A tire that is underpumped by 3 to 5 kilograms will not be functional, whereas a slight overpressure can spoil it. So it's all about pressure. If you enter a market that is too vast or noisy for the resources you have, the signal sent to you will remain unheard. Your marketing will crumble, its signals will stall. Think hard before offering a new brand of chewing gum on the Massachusetts market. Launching a product on too large a market will not have the effect of increasing the pressure of a swollen tire by several kilograms. You will not be able to create the necessary pressure and will never get out of the pit. Entering the market of household coffee makers with its Senseo device. Laura Lee's company did not have enough resources to overcome the pit, at least in the USA. In Holland, on the other hand, in a much smaller market, she managed to win 40% of households. The company had the strength to create the necessary pressure in this tiny market, whereas in the US, according to her statements, the market share is 1% of households. The market is too vast. There are too few resources. It's no wonder to stay in the pit for a long time. Since few Americans have a Senseo coffee maker at home, few people talk about it, few stores offer it. Rumors do not spread, so this product cannot create a critical Massachusetts. There are too many signals to send, too few resources to complete this task. Determine what kind of pressure you are able to create, and then find a niche for yourself. Not too bulky, not too tight. You're amazing. How dare you squander yourself? Can you and your organization change everything, create a wonderful product or service, achieve more, be first class? How dare you waste your own resources right and left? How dare you be content with mediocrity just because you have to do too much routine work, constantly catching up on something? Simple advice: if you have achieved something, use it to become first class. Change the rules of the game, set the bar for everyone else. You can do this only by directing all available resources to get out of the pit, the greatest of those that you can do. You will be able to overcome this pit only by abandoning all other undertakings. If your idea is not capable of shaking the world, step back immediately. Retreat, directing your energy to storm-worthy pits. Come on, let's get to work. We're waiting. Questions about the pit. What is it? Pit, cliff, or cul-de-sac? If cul-de is sac, Is it possible to turn him into a pit? Will my persistence pay off in the long run? Am I trying to influence a specific person, organization, or do my actions extend to the market as a whole? When should I retreat? It is necessary to decide now, and not when you get involved in this matter, or when I am already ready to capitulate internally. If I give up on this idea, will it increase my chances of getting out of the hole deeper? If I step back one way or another, is there an opportunity to do something instead that will change the rules of the game? Should I seek collaboration with Ib, strive to get on the Oprah show? What are the chances of this project becoming first class? Who awards the title of the first? Is it possible to narrow the class boundaries? Does it make sense to send out resumes in response to all job ads that were found just like that at random? If you like your current job, maybe it's time to quit. Which is better, to do nothing, or to develop a plan of surrender and then do something substantial? Don't you shy away from the wonderful as a way to retreat, but not to give up. If something scares you, maybe it's worth a try. From the author. This book is really concise. It's not easy to write such books, but I had to. You forced me. My readers are great critics. And that's what they advise, fewer words. It is almost impossible to overdo it with investments in your own primacy in the market. All successes are the same, so are failures. Success comes when you create something wonderful. Failure is the result of premature surrender. Success awaits the first class who act. Failure lies in wait for those who are stuck in affairs from which they do not dare to give up. Share the pit. Is anyone else stuck? Make a list of your colleagues who should know more about the retreat and advise them to read this book. They can supplement the list with the names of their acquaintances and so on.